Hello everyone, and thank you for watching this video. On today's topic, we'll be discussing some of the troubleshooting steps that you might have to do when trying to connect to your EC2 instance. Maybe you're unable to connect to your instance through SSH or RDP if it's a Windows instance. So we're just gonna cover some of the most usual problems that you might encounter. So let's just really quickly jump into our AWS console. Let's go into our EC2 um, management console here, and the first thing that we want to check is that our instance is in a good state. So it's kind of silly, but yeah, it's possible that you try to connect to your EC2 instance, and unfortunately, it was in stop state. So we first thing we want to make sure is actually it's in a running state. So I'm just gonna spin it up again and make sure that it's running, and kind of go on from there. So while this kind of goes up, let's see. Let's wait until it comes up. Now it's in a running state, so this is good, right? So we are already clear that their instance actually running, and let's try to connect to it. So I'm just gonna copy here from an SSH client. I'm just gonna copy this example that AWS gives us. Um, if it's an RDP or Windows instance, it's kind of like the same, I believe. So I'm just gonna go into my documents where my key file is located. I'm going to copy this incorrectly. Let me just copy this and go right here. All right. So after you check that instance was running, now we can still connect to it because we don't know yet. Let's see usually how we could solve this problem. So let's just click cancel here and take a look at a couple of things before we continue. So the second thing or that you should really take a look into is the security groups. So the security groups are the firewall between you and the or any resource to that instance. So basically, it's what protects what comes in and what goes out of your EC2 instance. So inbound rules are meant for everything that goes into your EC2 instance, and at the outbound rules, basically, it's what goes outside or what goes out of your EC2 instance. So something very important to know is that um, if you see here, we have port 22, right? You don't see port 22 defined right here, or even though it says protocol all, you don't have to specify that port 22 on the outbound because automatically anything that is inbound, it's meant to go back. So if you have something in inbound, it means that if you make a request, it has to come back. So you don't have to really um, make this like this. It's something different with network ACLs where you have to ensure that you have an inbound and then the outbound is also set. So it's just a little detail there, just for knowledge. So taking a look into your security group, we have a couple of rules here. We have port 8080, which allows anybody from the internet to connect to our EC2 instance through port 8080. But now the one that we really want to take a look is into port 22. So here in port 22, um, what we can see here, this is the public IP. I specifically said that I wanted to use my public IP so that only me can access that EC2 instance through port 22. And the thing that we want to check is that this hasn't changed. As my public IP could change overnight, this is important to be kept synchronized so that you don't have issues. So maybe you spin up the EC2 instance, it worked the first day, you come next day, it's not connecting. Usually it's just an easy fix to just make sure that this hasn't changed. So what I'm going to do is just check if it has changed. I'm just going to copy that IP address. I'm going to go into Google. I'm going to check for what's my IP. We want to check for the IP version 4. So let's just click right here. And just taking a look right here, we have 64.252.197.13. And now comparing it to the past IP address that I had in my security group, you can see it has definitely changed. So this is actually could potentially be the main issue of our connection problem. So Let's just go into security groups. You could go through here, or you can do network security tab and then go to security groups. Find your security group. In this case, is this one. I know it because this is the security group ID. And then click on edit inbound rules. So this is, if you can see, we want to go into the edit inbound rules place. And in here, we're just going to click on custom and click my IP. So this automatically AWS will resolve your public IP and set it up right here. If we click on save rules, we go back into EC2 instance. We click connect. We can copy the connection and then we try to connect again. It says yes, perfect. So now we are connected to it. Now the third scenario, which might be probably unlikely, well, it's very possible too, is that your EC2 instance IP could have changed. So, for example, let's say you one day, next morning, you came back and you say, hey, I want to connect to it. For example, what is going on here? Let me just do exit. Let's say you came next morning. You say, I'm going to use the same command that I used yesterday to connect to my EC2 instance. Um, it, it, and then it works. But let's say, for example, let's just try to look at this scenario. So you have an EC2 instance. You do a instance stopped. Actually, I'm just going to copy this public IP right here. You do instance stop. What's going to happen is that when you spin up the EC2 instance, the public IP could change, or actually is going to change every time you do a stop and start, because the underlying host, right, it's going to change every time you do a stop and start. So just ensure that if, for example, you have an SSH connection to your EC2 instance, for example, for accessing your database through your workbench, SQL workbench, or anything like that. Just make sure that the IP address that you have or you're pointing to is still the same. So, kind of showing you a common problem is you go right here. Let's say I'm gonna use the same command that I used yesterday or just now. Um, let's just wait until it comes back up. Let's see. It's a pending state. So it's in a running state right now, right? And I click on here. Let's just try to connect. If you see it doesn't work, that's because the IP address of my instance has changed. So usually you're gonna have to come here, check the public DNS, copy it again, or actually easier, just connect here, copy this command again, and you should be good to go, right? But this is not really efficient because you really have to come and copy this public IP every time you shut it. You stop and start your instance. So I'm just going to show you here a little quick way to fix this. First thing, shut down your instance. So once it's in a stop state, we're going to go and move into elastic IP. So we're going to allocate an elastic IP. An elastic IP is basically a static IP that you can reserve so that every time you stop the instance and start it up, it will use that IP address for your EC2 instance instead of having to automatically have an IP address assigned to you. So I'm just going to create a new elastic IP. You're gonna select here the US East 1, which is the region where I am right now. Create allocate, and right here, this is the new IP address. So important after this, ensure you always attach this IP address to your EC2 instance. If you leave it like this, you might incur charges by not using it because this is an IP address that is non-recyclable, meaning that it's assigned to you and only you. And basically, AWS doesn't want you to have a lot of allocated elastic IPs just sitting around, just not being attached to an instance. So you just make sure that you attach it to it. So in this case, I'm going to associate this elastic IP to our instance. I'm just going to go here, select my instance, which is in a stop state. We did this because we want to make sure that it's in a stop state to allocate it, and then Once this is done, the type is a public IP, right? And now that it is associated to my instance, we can go back, instance state start. And if you see automatically when I click start, you see that the public IP address has changed. So it's because this is my new public IP. And now, if every time I do stop start, my IP address should not change and be constant. Um, let's just wait until it's in a good running state, just to show you that it's actually working. Right there. Copy your command again. Go back to our terminal. Just gonna clear here. SSH, and we are okay. This is interesting. Aha. Okay, there we go. There we are. So it's working again. And now I think this is yeah, I think we've covered most of the cases to or resolve connection problems to your EC2 instance. I hope this video is helpful. Leave a comment if there's another issue that you're encountering. Maybe we could do a new video of troubleshooting issues of connection. Either way, thank you so much. Ensure that you give us a like and you subscribe to the channel, which we will be publishing more videos later on. Thank you.